So what is this understanding that I keep referring to? This ultra, this thing that'll change everything. Well, it's kind of hard to explain, and I'm going to do my best. Like I said, words just don't always do it justice. They never do it justice. And therefore, metaphors often work well. So I may throw in some metaphors with this. But let me tell you what, to start out, let me tell you what Ultra EFT is and what it is not. So what it is not is, it's not a method to think more positively. It's not something that you get right off the bat. Maybe if you had a profound insight, you'd see things differently. But generally speaking, people who are exposed to this understanding, it takes time. It may take weeks, it may take months, it may take years. There are people who have been diving into this understanding for decades. It's that deep, and it's that worthy of immersing yourself in. So it's also not a cognitive or behavioral strategy at all. It's totally not that. And it's also not what it appears to be when you first learn about it. So, little teaser there. And so what Ultra EFT is, it's a paradigm shift of huge proportions. It's descriptive rather than prescriptive. I'll explain that a little bit later. And it's life-changing stuff for real. And it's a way for you to see clearly how you create your reality. The understanding behind Ultra is based on principles. And just like gravity, you can't change gravity. It just is. It's always there. It's constant. You can depend on it. The principles behind how we experience life are exactly like that. So the principles are one, but to explain them, I'm going to explain them as three different principles. So the first principle is the principle of greater mind. And by that I mean the universe, it's the divine intelligence, or the greater intelligence if you don't like the word divine. It's about everything that is. It's the air, the water, the trees, it's nature, it's the stars. It's everything that's form and formless. And like I said, how do you have a word to describe that? That's a really hard thing to describe in a simple word. So it's that force, that intelligence that powers everything. It's neutral. It is what it is. It's the thing that turns an acorn into a tree. It's the thing that brings a baby to the world. It's the thing that sends the birds south in the winter. If you have a cut, it's the thing that heals that without you even having to think about it. It's that immense, immeasurable, constant what is. So I'm going to call that mind or greater intelligence as one principle that is. The next principle is consciousness. So we've got this world that is everything, form and formless. Now, I like to imagine it like a big blinking eyeball. So it's like, whoop, wakes up to it. Okay, wow, just taking it all in. Whew, just absorbing, seeing it, being aware and awake to it. Because without that, it exists, and who's seeing it, who's being it, who's experiencing it? Nobody. You need the consciousness to kind of be open to it and taking it in. So consciousness also is neutral. And it's that big blinking blank eyeball. When we're born, we wake up, boom, we're aware. We're aware. It's pure awareness. The third principle, which is really fascinating, and it's what gets us all caught up and stuff, is the principle of thought. And by thought, I mean thought with a capital T. Not the thoughts we have, but that we think. Now, the principle of thought is also neutral. We may have awful thoughts, horrific thoughts, blissful thoughts, but that's the content of our thinking. The thought world, thoughts that come and go, they do their thing, that is neutral. They're just thoughts. They're ephemeral, transitory things that just fleet by. That's their nature. They're not good or bad. But when those thoughts come across our consciousness and float across our screen of consciousness, that's when they become important to us, because we experience every thought that comes across our awareness in the present moment. Now, thought and feeling are one. The world of emotion and feeling falls into the realm of thought with a capital T, because you cannot have a thought without a feeling, and you can't have a feeling without a thought. Now, you may have a feeling bubble up and not know what that thought is. You may not be able to identify the thought, but what that means is that there's a subconscious thought happening that's driving that. So it could be that you see something red, somewhere in there something says that's red. It informs our senses, it informs everything that we experience on every level in our awareness. So those three principles, greater mind, consciousness, and thought, interact and actually are one. It's kind of like the three states of water, ice, and steam. It's all still the same substance, but in a different form. And so there's an interaction that happens. So with thought, we can't control thought. This is kind of something that catches a lot of people up. We think we can control our thinking. We think we can change our thinking. But by the time the thought has popped in, that's just popped in on its own. Greater mind is bringing the thoughts in. It's all one. It's all one. So a thought comes in and it goes. All thought is fleeting. You can't hold on to a thought, which is really good news, especially if the thoughts are awful. But I'm going to go a little bit more into thought in a few minutes. So basically, these three principles that are constant, unchanging, like gravity, they were described by a man named Sydney Banks, who was in Salt Spring Island, British Columbia. And he had a really profound insight about this and how he worked. And it really changed his entire life. And he basically had people come from all over the world, including doctors and psychologists, and to come to listen to him explain this. And even he recognized it's not like he had this insight and that it was only for him to hear. This is the same information that gurus have probably come across over the centuries. This is one explanation of how we work that has resonated with a lot of people in a way that is kind of accessible. So how we work hasn't changed. How we describe how we work and how we understand it collectively is in the process of changing now more and more. When we start to see how we work, it really, really can change everything. So I mentioned before about this ultra understanding being descriptive and not prescriptive. Understanding the way that we work through these principles does not tell us how to live. It doesn't tell us what to do. It doesn't solve our problems. There's nothing about this understanding that does that. What it does do, however, is it describes how we work. It explains how we function, how we experience reality. And as such, it can really shift our perspective and allow a lot of things to fall away. When we see how we work, it's like something's been unveiled. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly.